Captain Lee Hanul stared at the main viewing screen. It showed a sight that made his stomach feel tight. The stars were beautiful, but in front of them, hundreds of silver ships moved together like a school of fish. This was the Galactic Accord's third pacification fleet. And they were not fishing. They were hunting. Hanul was the commander of the United Earth vessel Steadfast. His ship was a simple observation post. It was allowed to be here to watch, to learn. That was the agreement when humanity joined the Galactic Accord 5 years ago. They were junior members, beginners. They are beginning the final approach, a voice said next to him. He looked at his tactical officer, Kim Mincio. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard. She watched the screens like a scientist watches a dangerous experiment. She was here to write reports. Reports no one in the Accord would probably ever read. On the screen, the alien fleet moved toward a small green planet. It was the home of the Kel. The Kel were a small species. They had refused to join the Accord. They said they wanted to be left alone. The Accord did not like that. Open the common channel, Hanul said. We are required to listen. Mincio nodded. Her fingers moved on her screen. A moment later, a voice filled the bridge of the Steadfast. It was a deep voice. It was translated by their computers into perfect Korean, but it kept a strange musical tone. This was the voice. That was his name or his title. No one knew for sure. He was the commander of all Accord military forces. He was famous across the galaxy. He was also feared. People of Kel, the voice said. His words were slow and powerful. You have rejected peace. You have rejected unity. You stand alone. And in the galaxy, to stand alone is to fall. Hanul saw the Kel ships rise from their planet. There were maybe 50 of them. They were small. Their engines were weak. They flew bravely toward the silver wall of the Accord fleet. It was like watching a child run toward a tidal wave. We are obliged to witness, Mincio said quietly, repeating the rule. To witness is to understand the cost of disorder. Hanul said nothing. He hated this rule. The voice gave no more warnings. A signal was sent. From the Accord fleet, 1,000 bright lines of light flashed. They were not laser beams. They were something else. They were bolts of plasma, guided by gravity. They were called silver spun. They moved faster than the eye could follow. The Kel ships did not explode. They simply came apart. The silver spun tore through their thin metal hulls like paper. One moment there were ships. The next moment, there were clouds of glittering dust, catching the light of their sun. It was over in less than a minute. The bridge of the Steadfast was silent. The only sound was the quiet hum of the life support systems. The crew looked at their screens. No one looked at anyone else. Record the tactical data, Hanul said, his own voice sounding rough. Weapons yield, firing patterns, shield dispersion. For the report. Recording, Mincio said. Her voice was flat. She had seen this before. 3 times now. Each time it was the same dot on the screen. The Accord fleet moved toward the green planet. They did not fire on the cities. That was not their way. Instead, large ships descended into the atmosphere. They would take the resources they wanted. They would install a new government that agreed with the Accord. The Kel culture, their way of life, would be carefully, politely erased. It was called integration. It looked a lot like dying. The voice spoke again on the common channel. His voice was calm, satisfied. Order is restored. The galaxy moves forward as one. Let all who witness understand. The Accord is peace. The Accord is progress. Resistance is not bravery. It is noise, and noise is silenced. The channel closed. Hanul let out a slow breath. He turned from the screen. Set a course for the rally point. We will meet the Accord supply ship and transfer our logs. Yes, Captain, the helmsman, a young man named Choi Dae, said as the Steadfast turned away from the broken planet. Mincio came to stand by Hanul's chair. She held a data pad. My initial report is ready, she said. I noted the improved coordination of their destroyer wings. Their energy signatures were 15% more efficient than the last observation. Their shield harmonics have a new modulation. It would defeat our best projectile weapons. Hanul took the pad. He scrolled through the dense, technical words. It was a brilliant analysis. It detailed exactly how hopelessly outmatched humanity was. And the conclusion? He asked, already knowing the answer. Mincio looked at him. There was no emotion in her eyes. Only the truth. Conclusion. Direct military confrontation with any Accord fleet of equivalent size remains a 0% survival scenario for current human forces. Our technology is at least 2 centuries behind. Our strategic doctrines are considered primitive. Recommendation. Continue compliance and observational learning. Hanul handed the pad back to her. Send it, along with the sensor logs. They already have the sensor logs from their own ships, Mincio said. They don't need ours. We follow the rules, Hanul said. That is what we do. Mincio nodded and walked back to her station. Hanul stayed in his chair. He looked at the stars on the screen. They looked cold. The galaxy was a big, dark, beautiful place. And in it, humanity was small and quiet. They made good coffee. They wrote interesting music. They were polite. The Accord saw them as harmless. A nice little species to have around. Not a threat. Not a power. Sometimes, late at night on the Steadfast, Hanul would read history. Old Earth history. He read about wars long before spaceflight. He read about soldiers who hid in jungles and mountains. They did not have the biggest guns or the tallest tanks. They had patience. They had cleverness. They understood the ground. They turned weakness into a weapon. He closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the Kell ships turning to dust. He thought of the voices smooth. Certain words, noise is silenced. He opened his eyes and tapped a command on his chair. Private file opened on his screen. It was not an official report. It was a simple text document. At the top, it had 2 words. Protocol Chiri. He did not open it. He just looked at the name. It was an old Korean word. It meant the footprint you leave behind. The sign that you were there. He closed the file. It was not for him to use. Not today. Today they were witnesses. They were quiet observers. The Steadfast sailed on. A small, lonely ship in the vast dark, carrying its report of its own helplessness back to an Earth that everyone had already decided was no threat at all. The Grand Conclave Chamber on the Accord Orbital Station Harmony was a place of breathtaking beauty. The air smelled faintly of a sweet, alien flower. The ceiling was a perfect dome showing a view of the nebula outside. Soft light came from everywhere and nowhere. It was designed to make beings feel calm, small, and agreeable. Park Jisoo did not feel agreeable. She felt like she had a rock in her shoe. She stood at the simple, polished stone podium meant for petitioning species. In front of her, in floating tiers that reached up toward the dome, were the representatives of the major galactic powers. Their forms were varied. Some were insect-like, some were graceful and long-limbed, others were blobs of light in containment suits. They all looked down at her with polite, distant interest. Humanity was always interesting in a simple sort of way. But her attention was fixed on the central platform. There, seated on a throne of intertwined light and metal, was the voice. He was tall, with grayish skin and eyes that seemed to change color. He did not move much. He did not need to. His presence filled the huge room. He was listening, or at least he appeared to be. Jisoo took a small breath. She was Earth's senior diplomat to the Accord. Her job was to be reasonable, to be clear, and to protect human interests. Right now, her interest was a small, green world called Arcadia 9. Esteemed voice, honored members of the conclave. She began, her voice amplified just enough to reach everyone. Thank you for hearing our petition. The matter is one of simple necessity. The colony of Arcadia 9, while small, is vital to our people. Its biosphere is uniquely suited to growing Terran staple crops. It is not a mineral-rich world. It is a breadbasket, feeds millions. She gestured, and a hologram appeared above her. It showed fields of golden wheat under a gentle sun. It showed clean water and simple, happy-looking biodomes. It was a picture of peace and hard work. The Accord's proposal for resource realignment would see this world converted to a thorium extraction site. She continued. The process would render the soil and atmosphere toxic for centuries. We humbly ask that Arcadia 9 be exempted from this realignment. We can, together, identify other systems more suitable for mineral harvesting. Systems without a fragile, established biosphere. Without people. There was a soft murmur in the chamber. It was not a sound of support. It was more like the sound of adults hearing a child explain why they should not have to go to bed. It was faintly amusing. The voice shifted. It was a small movement, but the entire chamber went silent. He looked at Jisoo. His gaze felt heavy, like a physical weight on her shoulders. Diplomat Park, the voice said. His translated voice was calm, melodious. It filled the room without effort. We hear your attachment. Your species has a noted sentimentality for dirt and water. It is one of your charming quirks. A few soft, clicking sounds of alien laughter echoed in the tears. Jisoo kept her face still. She had practiced this. Do not show anger. Do not show fear. However, the voice continued. The galactic engine of progress cannot be powered by charm. The thorium in Arcadia 9's crust is of a rare, stable isotope. It is needed for the new jump gates. These gates will bring peace and unity to 100 more worlds. Your breadbasket feeds one species. Our gates will connect a galaxy. You speak of millions. We serve trillions. He leaned forward slightly. The calculus of need is clear. Your contribution to the Accord has been your compliance. Your willingness to learn. This is valued. Do not now introduce the friction of selfishness. The words were like slaps, delivered with a gentle tone. Jisoo felt her face grow warm. She clasped her hands behind her back so no one would see them tremble. It is not selfishness to wish to feed our people, she said, trying to keep her own voice as steady as his. It is survival. We are not refusing to contribute. We are asking for a different method. A compromise. Compromise. The voice said the word as if tasting it. He did not seem to like the flavor. Compromise is what happens between equals, Diplomat Park. It is a negotiation of mutual strength. You are asking for an exception based on weakness. You are saying, we cannot spare this. The strong do not speak this way. The Accord is strong. Your role is to be supported, to be guided, not to guide. The finality in his voice was absolute. Jisoo knew she had lost. She had known she would lose before she even entered the chamber. But she had to go through the motions. Earth's government had ordered it. They had to be seen trying the polite way. The voice raised one long-fingered hand. A decree, written in flowing galactic script, appeared in the air above him. The realignment of the Arcadia 9 system will proceed. You will have one of your standard months to remove your people, their personal effects, and any sentimental plants you wish to keep. Accord engineers will then begin their work. He looked directly at the hologram of the wheat fields. It flickered and vanished under his gaze. The galaxy thanks you for your contribution, he said, but his eyes were on Jisoo, and the message in them was different. Said, know your place. The session was over. The representatives began to float away, chatting softly about other matters. The fate of a human colony was a minor footnote in their day. Jisoo stood alone at the podium for a moment, the sweet air of the chamber feeling thick and suffocating. An aide, a young man named Kim-sun, approached her. His face was pale. Madam Diplomat, the orders from Earth, he whispered, handing her a data pad. She took it. The message was short and direct. It was from the Unified Earth Security Council. It had one official line: comply with the Accord decree. Begin immediate evacuation of Arcadia 9. Ensure all citizens are safe. But below that, there was a second line. It was on a different, secure channel. It was just 4 words. Execute Protocol Cheery. Phase 1. Jisoo erased the message. She handed the pad back to Kim Sunday. All the frustration, the humiliation she felt in the chamber, cooled and hardened into something else. Something sharp and focused. Send the compliance notice to the Accord, she said, her voice now empty of all emotion. Inform them that humanity is a cooperative member of the community and will vacate Arcadia. 9 within the time frame given. Yes, diplomat, Kim Sun said, his eyes wide. He had seen the second line too as they walked out of the beautiful chamber. Leaving the scent of alien flowers behind, Jisoo thought of the voice's words. Your contribution is your compliance. She allowed herself a small, cold smile as the doors shut behind her. Compliance could take many forms. Sometimes it looked exactly like retreat. Sometimes the best way to set a trap was to first clean the ground of everything you cared about. Phase 1 had just begun. General Yoon Taeyong stood on a metal walkway, high above a cavern so vast its ceiling was lost in mist and artificial light. Below him, nestled in the deep gravity well of Jupiter, was the real heart of human military power. It was not a fleet of shining ships. It was a city of dark, silent rock. This place had no official name. The crew who lived and worked here called it the Forge. It was not one thing but many. It was a collection of massive asteroids, towed and anchored here decades ago, hidden within the violent magnetic storms of the gas giant. From the outside, even to Accord sensors, it looked like nothing. Just more junk in Jupiter's turbulent belt. The young officer, Commander Park Ji-hun, handed Yoon a data slate. The last civilian transport has left Arcadia 9, sir. The planet is quiet. Accord observation satellites confirm it. They see only empty buildings and still fields. Yoon nodded, his eyes never leaving the scene below. And they see what we want them to see. A retreat. A surrender. Below, on the surface of the largest asteroid, something was happening. A huge section of rock 3 kilometers long was splitting open. It did not move like a door. It moved like a flower blooming in slow motion. The petals of carved asteroid rock slid apart, and from the darkness within, a shape began to rise. It was not a sleek starship. It was a block of black metal, angular and ugly. It had no elegant curves, no shining hull. It was a weapon platform. Its surface was covered in dull, non-reflective panels and the blunt ends of launch tubes. This was a Sentinel, the cornerstone of Protocol Cheery. Bring it online, Yoon said, his voice calm. Protocol Cheery was not a secret weapon. It was a secret doctrine. For over 50 years, while humanity publicly developed its small, polite exploration and defense fleet, its real efforts went here. The public technology they traded with the Accord was good, but it was always one generation behind. The best ideas, the real breakthroughs, came here to the Forge. The doctrine was simple: humanity would never win a war of fleet maneuver against the Accord. Their ships were faster, their weapons hit harder, their shields were stronger. So humanity would not fight that war. They would fight a war of place, of home ground. Every human system, every colony, every resource outpost had been quietly, patiently turned into a fortress. Not with big walls and flashing guns. With hidden things. With patient things. Yoon walked along the gantry, Park Ji-hun following. They entered a control room carved into the asteroid wall. Screens showed the entire Sol system. On a normal tactical display, it looked peaceful. But Yoon tapped a command, and the display changed. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of faint icons glowed to life. They were hidden in the asteroid belt. They were buried in the ice of distant moons. They were floating in the corona of the sun, disguised as solar research probes. They were dormant comets in the Oort cloud with new, heavy cores. Status of the Cheery network for Arcadia 9. Yoon asked. Park Ji-hun called up another screen. It showed the distant colony system. Phase 1 seeding was completed 8 years ago, sir. During the geological survey missions. Assets are dormant and passive, awaiting the wake-up signal. The assets were not ships. Ships could be chased and killed. These were other things. There were driftwood arrays, clusters of smart rocks with simple thrusters and a single heavy slug of tungsten. They were not for fighting ships. They were for destroying the sensitive, sprawling antennae of an enemy fleet, the things they needed to talk to each other. There were ghost projectors. Satellites that did nothing but listen to Accord communications and then flood space with meaningless noise that perfectly mimicked their own signal patterns. to create confusion, to turn their own network against them. And there were the knockers, the cornerstone, relativistic kinetic kill vehicles. They were not missiles with engines. They were launched from hidden, magnetic rails buried deep in asteroids. They were given one powerful push. Then they coasted, silently, for years if needed. They were just lumps of incredibly dense metal, shaped like needles, guided by simple AI. They moved at a percentage of light speed so high that by the time an enemy sensor saw them, it was already too late. Their shield technology was designed for energy weapons. It was not good at stopping a telephone pole of tungsten moving fast enough to crack a continent. But they will see the launch signature, Park Ji-hun had argued when he first learned of the plan years ago. Yoon had smiled then, a rare sight. They will see an asteroid collision, a minor comet breakup, a piece of space junk falling into the sun. We are not hiding the weapon. We are hiding the launch inside a natural event. By the time the projectile is on its way, there is nothing to see but empty space. Now, standing in the control room, Yoon gave the order. Send the wake-up call to Arcadia 9. Activate all dormant Protocol Cheery assets. Set condition watchful sleep. They are to listen and prepare. They are not to reveal themselves unless an Accord ship enters the system with hostile intent after the evacuation deadline. Signal sent, sir, Park said. All assets are pinging back. Network is green. On the screen, the Arcadia 9 system glowed with soft, hidden lights. To the Accord observers, the planet was empty and peaceful. A prize waiting to be taken. They saw the silence of defeat. Yoon Taeyong saw a perfectly clean battlefield. He saw a trap that had taken 50 years to build. He saw a field of wheat that had been harvested, so that the land could now be used to plant something else entirely. The Accord believed humanity's strength was measured in the ships they could see. They were wrong. Humanity's strength was in the rocks they couldn't see, in the patience they didn't show, and in the terrible, simple physics they had decided to master in silence. Now, Yoon said quietly, watching the icons glow on the screen, we wait for them to walk into the room, and we make sure the door locks behind them. The observation deck on the Accord station gave a perfect view of the Arcadia 9 system's primary star. It was a calm, yellow sun, much like humanity's own. Captain Lee Hanul stood at the clear alloy window watching. His ship, the Steadfast, was docked nearby. It felt small and fragile here, surrounded by the sleek, powerful vessels of the Accord. Kim Min-seo stood beside him, a data pad in her hand. The occupation fleet has entered the system's outer marker, she said, her voice low. 1 light cruiser, the Clarity, 3 destroyers, and 4 troop transports. It's a standard integration force. More than enough for an empty world. Hanul nodded. It was a modest fleet by Accord standards. But it was a symbol. Its arrival meant the transfer was complete. Humanity's time on Arcadia 9 was officially over. He could see the ships on a small display screen beside the window. They moved with confident, slow grace, like wolves entering an empty valley. Are we required to observe this as well? Hanul asked, though he already knew the answer. Yes, Captain, Min-seo said. As the nearest human-affiliated vessel, we are to witness the lawful commencement of Accord resource operations. To confirm the peaceful transition. Peaceful, Hanul repeated. The word felt strange in his mouth on the screen. The lead cruiser, the Clarity, moved into a high orbit around the green and blue planet. The troop transports began their slow descent toward the main colony site. The image zoomed in. They would be landing in the central square, where the community garden used to be, where children had played. Receiving their victory broadcast, Min-seo said, a hint of disgust finally coloring her tone. She patched the audio to the room's speaker. The voice's melodic, translated voice filled the quiet observation deck. He was not on the ships, but his message was, the galaxy grows, order expands. Today, the system of Arcadia 9 is welcomed into the productive fold of the Accord. The former inhabitants have left with dignity. Progress continues. Let this be a lesson in graceful compliance. Hanul's hands tightened behind his back. Graceful compliance. He thought of the farmers he had seen on the last evacuation ship, their faces blank with loss. On the screen, the first transport settled onto the planet's surface. Its landing legs touched the soil near the empty grain silos. A ramp began to extend. Then, everything changed. It was not an explosion. It was something quicker and cleaner. From a point in the asteroid belt, a tiny, fast-moving object became a bright line on the sensor display. It crossed the distance between the belt and the planet's orbit in a flash. It struck the clarity not on its main hull, but on its long, delicate communications spire at the very top of the ship. The spire, and a large chunk of the ship's upper deck, simply vanished, turned to vapor and shrapnel. The clarity went dark, its lights blinking out. It began to drift, a dead whale in a silent sea. The voice's broadcast cut off mid-sentence. For 3 full seconds, nothing else happened. The other Accord ships hung in space, seemingly confused. Their systems would be screaming with alerts, trying to understand what had hit them. There was no energy signature, no missile trail, just an impact from nowhere. Then, the asteroid belt seemed to come alive. Not with ships, but with light. Dozens of small, hot objects shot out from different rocks, not toward the ships, but toward points in the empty space around them. These were the driftwood arrays. Their tungsten slugs tore through the delicate sensor dishes and relay antennae on the destroyers. The destroyers were not harmed, but they were suddenly deaf and blind, their beautiful coordination shattered. Alarms finally sounded on the station. Hanul and Mincio could hear them through the walls. Red light flashed on the observation deck. Chaos signals detected, Mincio said, her eyes wide on her datapad. Their communication channels are being flooded. They're receiving thousands of false orders, enemy contact reports, system failure warnings. It's gibberish. They can't talk to each other. On the screen, the Accord destroyers started moving, but in wrong, jerky ways. One turned sharply and fired its plasma cannons at empty space. Another began cycling its landing bay doors open and shut, as if receiving a command to deploy fighters that did not exist. They were panicking. They were fighting ghosts. The troop transports on the surface tried to lift off. Their engines flared. But from the hills around the colony, hidden bunkers that had looked like geological formations slid open. Simple, ground-based lasers, not powerful enough to pierce a ship's shield, lanced out. They did not aim for the hulls. They aimed for the Engine's delicate plasma nozzles and the optical sensor clusters. One transport veered wildly and crashed into a vacant field. Another spun, its steering crippled, and slammed sideways into a silent barn. It was not a battle. It was a dismantling. Hanul watched, his breath caught in his throat. He saw no human ships. He saw no proud fleet engaging the enemy. He saw the system itself attacking. The rocks, the space, the very ground of the colony had turned against the Accord. It was unnatural. It was terrifying. Within 4 minutes, it was over. The clarity was a dead, drifting hulk. The destroyers were spinning slowly, blinded and babbling to themselves on jammed channels. 2 transports were wrecked on the surface. The other 2 had managed to escape the atmosphere but were drifting helplessly, their navigation systems confused by the torrent of false data. Silence returned to the observation deck. The red alarm lights kept flashing, but the sound was muted. Kim Mincio looked up from her pad. Her face was pale, but her eyes were blazing with a fierce, understanding light. "They didn't fight our fleet," she whispered, "because we didn't send one. They walked into a room, and the room itself attacked them." Hanul could only nod. He looked at the peaceful yellow sun, and at the broken, confused fleet near the green planet. He thought of Protocol Cheery. The footprint. The galaxy would soon see the footprint. And it did not look like a human boot. It looked like a trap that had been waiting in the dark for 50 years, and had just closed its jaws. The command citadel of the Voice was the most advanced warship in the known galaxy, the Sovereign Will. Its bridge was a vast, quiet space of soft light and flowing data. Here, the Voice received reports from 1,000 sectors, his mind a calm center of the galactic order. But now, that center was cracking. He stood before the main holographic display. his gray hands clasped tightly behind his back. On the display, the Arcadia 9 system glowed. The icons of his occupation force were not the bright blue of active units. They were the flickering, dull gray of casualties. The Clarity was a black shell. The destroyers spun, inert. The transports were silent. His senior tactician, a being whose name translated to First Claw, hissed in confusion. The reports are impossible, voice. They describe no enemy fleet. They describe impacts from asteroids, system malfunctions, communications chaos. It is as if the space itself became hostile. The humans, the voice said, his translated voice still smooth, but colder now. They have tricked us. They hid weapons. It is more than hidden weapons, First Claw argued, pulling up the fragmented sensor data. The kinetic strike on the Clarity. It came from the asteroid belt. The velocity was extreme. Their technology for stealth and guidance should not allow this. Their energy profiles are all wrong. It is primitive, but applied with precision we did not think them capable of. A cold anger began to burn in the voice's stomach. This was not just an attack. It was an insult. A small, quiet species had not only struck back, but had done so in a way that made his mighty fleet look foolish. They had not challenged his strength. They had ignored it completely and attacked his eyes and ears instead. Order the 4th battle group to converge on the Arcadia system. The voice commanded, his tone leaving no room for question. The 9th and 12th will move to support. We will scour that system of every rock. We will burn their hidden nests out of the void. Then we will move to their home system, Sol, and show them the cost of their deceit. The orders flew. Across the sector, Accord fleets, beautiful and deadly constellations of silver ships, powered up their drives. Their goal was clear: punish humanity, erase the stain on the Accord's perfection. The first fleet to respond, the 4th battle group, jumped into the outer edges of the Arcadia 9 system. 20 heavy cruisers, 50 destroyers, and a swarm of lighter ships. They arrived with shields glowing, weapons charged, sensors sweeping space for any sign of the enemy. They found nothing. No human ships decloaked. No formations awaited them. The system was as empty and silent as before. Their powerful sensors scanned the asteroid belt. They detected ordinary rocks, tumbling in the ancient dark. They scanned the planets and moons. They found only natural formations and the cold, empty ruins of the human colony. Spread out, the 4th's commander signaled, "Search pattern Delta. Find their hiding places." As the fleet dispersed, moving deeper into the system, the problems began. A destroyer on the flank suddenly reported a complete navigation failure. Its star maps had been corrupted, replaced with nonsense data. It was flying blind. A cruiser in the center lost all long-range communications. Its messages became garbled, mixing with ghost signals that sounded like old human radio broadcasts. Another ship's sensor suite began identifying friendly vessels as unknown hostiles, causing its weapon systems to lock on in panic before being manually overridden. It was not one attack. It was 1,000 tiny cuts. Then, from the direction of the system's sun, a natural comet, a known celestial body on all their charts, suddenly shifted its trajectory. Not by much, but enough. As it passed through the heart of the fleet formation, its icy nucleus fractured. Not from weapons fire, from a precisely timed internal charge. The comet dissolved into a vast, glittering cloud of ice and dust, but hidden within that cloud were hundreds of small, dense projectiles. They sprayed into the fleet like shotgun pellets. Shields flared bright as they absorbed the impacts. No ships were destroyed, but several were damaged. Sensor arrays were smashed. Shield projectors were overloaded. The beautiful, coordinated formation became a confused swarm. Across the fleet, commanders demanded answers. Who was attacking? Where was the enemy? The answer came from their own flagship's tactical AI, which had been silently analyzing the chaos. It displayed its conclusion on the main screen, a single line of text that sent a chill through the command crew. Hypothesis: enemy assets are not mobile. Enemy assets are the fixed geography of the system. The system itself is the weapon. On the sovereign will. Light years away, the voice watched the live feed. He saw his mighty fourth battle group, one of the spears of his will, being baffled and bloodied by rocks and ice and noise. They were not losing a battle. They were trying to fight a jungle, and the vines and the insects were winning. Recall them, the voice said, the words ash in his mouth. But voice, first Claw began. Recall them. The voice's command was a sharp crack, the first time any on the bridge had heard his calm break. Do not send more fleets into that mess. They have turned their space into a labyrinth of traps. We will not chase ghosts. He turned his gaze to a different star on the hologram. A yellow, ordinary star. Sol. Humanity's cradle. If they have turned a backwater colony into a fortress, then their home must be a true nightmare, he said, his voice regaining its icy control. We will not play their game of hide and seek in the rocks. We will go to the source. We will bring the sovereign will and the grand armada to Sol. We will stand at their doorstep with such force that their tricks will mean nothing. We will force them to face us directly, in the open. And there we will erase them. It was a logical move. The move of a being who believed in overwhelming, visible power. He would not admit the fear coiling in his gut. The fear of an enemy that refused to be an enemy you could see, that fought with patience and stone instead of fury and fire that he gave the orders. The greatest assembly of accord military might in a generation began to gather. Their destination, the Sol system. The voice did not know he was doing exactly what General Yoon Taeyong had hoped for. He was leaving the confusing jungle of Arcadia 9 and walking, with all his strength and pride, toward the heart of the trap. He was coming to the place humanity had spent 50 years preparing, not for a battle but for a demonstration. The edge of the Sol system was not marked by a sign or a wall. It was simply a point where the stars felt a little colder, the dark a little deeper. Here, the might of the Galactic Accord assembled. It was an awe-inspiring sight, a breathtaking display of power meant to crush a spirit before a single shot was fired. The flagship, the sovereign will, hung at the center like a beautiful, deadly jewel. Around it, in perfect geometric formations, were hundreds of warships, heavy dreadnoughts, swift attack cruisers, clouds of fighter drones that shimmered like metallic dust. Their combined engines created a soft hum that vibrated through space itself. It was the Grand Armada. It was the fist of the galaxy, clenched and ready to strike a single, small, defiant world. On the bridge of the sovereign will, the voice felt a measure of calm return. This was order. This was clarity. The confusing, dirty tricks of Arcadia 9 were far behind. Here was open space. Here, strength would decide everything. All systems report readiness, First Claw said, his voice filled with grim satisfaction. The Armada awaits your command to advance on the inner system. Their homeworld will be in visual range in 6 hours. The voice nodded. He would make the humans watch their own end approach in the sky. He opened the fleet-wide channel, his voice prepared to deliver a final, crushing ultimatum. But before he could speak, a new contact pinged on the edge of their sensor web. It was small, alone. It was emerging from behind the pale, icy bulk of Neptune. Identify, the voice commanded. The sensor officer worked. It is a vessel. Its energy signature is low. It matches the profile of a United Earth observation ship. The steadfast. A ripple of dismissive annoyance went through the bridge crew. The little human watchcraft from Arcadia 9. Had it come to beg? To surrender? Destroy it? First Claw suggested. A first demonstration. Wait, the voice said. A final, petty thought occurred to him. Let them see their own symbol of weakness wiped away. Let the commander of that pitiful ship broadcast the annihilation of his own vessel to Earth. It would be poetic. Hail them. Put them on screen. Let all channels hear. The connection was made. The main viewer shifted from the starfield to the bridge of the human ship. The voice saw Captain Lee Hanul, standing calmly. He saw the tactical officer, Kim Mincio, beside him. They did not look afraid. They looked ready. Captain. The voice began, his tone one of weary finality. "You have come to witness the end of your species. You will have a front row seat. Your ship will be the first to fall, a lesson in the cost of—" Hanul interrupted him. It was a shocking, unthinkable breach of protocol. His voice was clear and firm. "Voice of the Accord. We are not here to witness. We are here to deliver a message. And to show you something you have missed." The voice felt a spark of anger. "You will be silent. You should listen," Hanul said. He nodded to Officer Kim. On the main viewer of the Sovereign Will, the image split. One side still showed Hanul. The other side began to play a recording. It was the raw, unedited sensor logs from the Steadfast of the Battle of Arcadia 9. But it was not from the human perspective. It was a masterfully reconstructed view from the Accord's own perspective. The voice watched, frozen, as he saw his own cruiser, the Clarity, be struck by the invisible kinetic rod. The data scroll next to the image highlighted the exact moment the projectile was launched. Not from a ship, but from a specific asteroid, 12 days earlier, disguised as a minor collision. It highlighted the ghost signals flooding his destroyer's networks, showing how they perfectly mimicked Accord command codes. It showed the ground-based lasers on Arcadia 9, their locations marked on a map, revealing they had been installed years ago as part of atmospheric sensors. The recording ended. It was followed by a new live image, a tactical map of the Sol system. But it was not the empty map the Accord sensors saw. This map was alive. Thousands of dormant icons glowed to life. Red markers appeared on specific asteroids in the belt. Blue markers lit up on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Yellow markers blinked from quiet orbits around Mars and Venus. White, crawling lines traced the predicted paths of every natural comet and large rock in the outer system, each line tagged with a weapons yield and an activation status. It was a complete, real-time map of Protocol Chiri. Then the view zoomed in. Not on Earth. On the Sovereign Will itself. A detailed, rotating schematic of his own flagship appeared. 17 points on the hull began to pulse with a soft, red light. Each point was labeled Primary Shield Conduit Junction 3, Main Gravitic Drive Coupling Array, Bridge Command Nexus Structural Stress Point. A calm, female computer voice, speaking in the Accord's own language, began to narrate. Tactical Vulnerability Assessment. Target: Sovereign Will Class Command Citadel. The following critical subsystems are currently optically painted by long-range LiDAR buoys and subject to immediate kinetic interception. Probability of mission kill upon activation: 100%. The voice listed the 17 points. With each one, the red light on the schematic pulsed. The data was flawless. It was intimate. It was the kind of knowledge you only had if you had been studying, measuring, and planning for this exact moment for decades. On the bridge of the Sovereign Will, the silence was total. The majestic view of the Grand Armada outside the windows now seemed like a joke. They were not an unstoppable force. They were targets, standing in the middle of 1,000 hidden gun barrels. The voice stared at the schematic of his own death. He saw the cold, mathematical certainty of it. This was not a bluff. The humans had not built a shield. They had built a sniper's scope, and they had been looking at him through it for a very, very long time. He opened his mouth. He needed to speak. He needed to give the order to attack, to retreat, to do something. The fleet-wide channel was open. Hundreds of commanders, trillions of beings across the galaxy listening in, waited for his wisdom, for his strength, for his voice. But no sound came out. His mind was a storm of terror and understanding. He finally saw it. Humanity's strength was not in the power to destroy. It was in the patience to aim. They had let the galaxy see only what they wanted. A quiet, compliant species. And while the galaxy looked away, they had carefully, quietly, pointed a gun at the head of every major power, and had only now chosen to reveal it. His lips moved. His throat worked. But his legendary voice, the instrument that had commanded galaxies, failed him completely. The terror was not of death. It was of being so completely, so utterly seen and countered by someone you never saw as a threat. The shock was absolute. It stole the breath from his lungs and the words from his tongue. On the screen, Lee Hanul watched the silent, struggling figure of the galaxy's most feared being. He gave a small, final nod. The message is delivered, Hanul said quietly, to the silent channel. The demonstration is complete. The transmission from the Steadfast ended, leaving the Accord fleet adrift in the silent, ticking darkness of a system that was suddenly, terribly watching them back. The Grand Armada did not retreat with sirens blaring or weapons firing. It retreated with silence. It was a slow, careful, and deeply confused process, like a large animal backing away from a hole in the ground it now realized was a predator's den. The order to withdraw did not come from the voice. It came from First Claw, his second in command, after a full minute of the leader's silent, stunned paralysis. The order was simple: disengage, fall back to Rally Point Gamma. Do not power weapons. Do not make sudden moves. The message from the Steadfast had been broadcast on all common galactic channels. Every species in the Accord had seen it. They had seen the map of hidden weapons lighting up the Sol system like a deadly constellation. They had seen the schematic of the Sovereign will dissected into 17 fatal weaknesses. Most of all, they had seen the voice, the unshakable symbol of galactic power, rendered speechless by sheer, tactical dread on Earth. In a secure command bunker deep under the Alps, General Yoon Taeyong watched the last Accord ships vanish from the edge of the solar system. The room was quiet. The staff officers around him let out breaths they had been holding for hours. There was no cheering. The relief was too deep, too heavy for that. Yoon turned to a screen where Diplomat Park Jisoo appeared. She was in her office on the Accord Station Harmony, which was now in a state of chaotic, quiet uproar. "It is done, General," Jisoo said. Her face showed the strain of the last days, but her eyes were clear. "Phase 3 is complete," Yoon replied. "Now you have the harder job." Jisoo nodded. She smoothed her jacket and left her office. The walk to the conclave chamber was different this time. The other alien delegates did not look at her with polite disinterest. They looked at her with new eyes that held fear and calculation and a desperate need to understand. The chamber was not full. Many were still watching the feeds. But the Voice's platform was empty. He had retreated to his ship, his condition unknown. In his absence, a temporary council of senior species representatives had assembled. They watched Jisoo as she approached the central floor. The room was utterly silent. She did not go to the petitioning species podium. She walked to the center of the main floor, a space reserved for Accord leadership. She stopped and looked at the faces around her. "Members of the Accord," she began. Her voice was calm, but it carried. There was no amplifier. No one needed one. For years, humanity has been a member of this community. We have listened. We have learned. We have followed the rules. She paused, letting the memory of their compliance, of the Voice's condescension, hang in the sweet air. "When you demanded our colony of Arcadia 9, we obeyed. We left our homes. We did not refuse. But we also did not forget the first duty of any species, the duty to protect its own. You mistook our patience for weakness. You mistook our silence for emptiness." She gestured, and a simple star map appeared. It showed the Sol system, clean of the terrifying weapon markers from Hanul's broadcast. It looked peaceful again. "What you saw today was not an act of aggression. It was an act of disclosure. We revealed only what has always been there, a defense, not a sword to conquer others, but a shield to protect our home. We built it not because we dream of war, but because we remember it. We remember what it is to be defenseless." One of the senior representatives, a willowy being from an old species, spoke, its voice trembling. You hid this. You deceived the community." "We survived," Jisoo corrected gently. "In a galaxy that measures strength only by the size of your fleet, we found a different kind of strength. The strength of the ground. The strength of the home. We do not wish to rule you. We never did. We only wish to be left in peace on our own worlds. Today we have proven we can guarantee that peace." She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. "The lesson of today is not that humanity is dangerous. The lesson is that humanity cannot be forced. Our strength will never be used to take from you, but it will always, always be used to protect what is ours. The path forward is not suspicion. It is respect. A respect that should have been there from the beginning. Back on the bridge of the Steadfast, drifting near Neptune, the tension was finally breaking. The crew moved with a dazed lightness. They had been the messenger for what felt like a declaration of war, but which had ended not in fire, but in a stunned silence. Captain Lee Hanul sat in his command chair, feeling the weight of exhaustion in his bones. Kim Mincio came and stood beside him, handing him a cup of hot, dark tea. "The last Accord ship has crossed the system boundary," she reported. "All Protocol Cheery assets are returning to watchful sleep status." Hanul took the tea. He looked at the main screen, at the peaceful, familiar planets of his home system. It looked no different than it had yesterday. But everything had changed. "What now?" Mincio asked, her voice quiet. She was not asking for orders. She was asking a bigger question. Hanul took a sip of the bitter, warming tea. He thought of the silent voice. He thought of the scared faces in the conclave. He thought of the farmers returning to Arcadia 9 one day to replant their fields. "Now," he said slowly, "they will have to learn to talk to us differently. Not as a teacher to a student, not as a master to a servant, but as one neighbor to another over a very high fence that we built." He looked at Mincio and managed a small, tired smile. "And now, perhaps, we learn what to do with a peace we don't have to beg for." The Steadfast turned its nose away from the cold dark of the outer system and toward the warm light of the inner planets. It was just one small ship going home. Behind it, it left a galaxy that was no longer sure of anything, a galactic terror who had lost his voice, and a simple, unshakable truth. Humanity was not weak. They had just been waiting quietly for everyone else to finish showing their strength first. And in that patience, they had found a power that could silence the universe.